Welcome to Delay the Decay, the podcast for the unashamedly ambitious who want to live longer, lead better, and love deeper by prioritizing what matters most. I'm your host, Dan Harty, coach, entrepreneur, and former pastor, here to help you build a life of intentional direction, not perfection, across 5 life domains: spiritual, relational, physical, mental, and financial. In our current mini-series, The Chain Reaction, How One Generation Shapes the Next, we'll explore what it means to pursue generational health across 5 life domains. Because direction, not perfection, is what echoes across generations and becomes the story our children tell. Welcome to another episode of Delay the Decay. Today's guest is Joey Harty. Joey's been married to Brittany for 10 years, and they're enjoying a full life with 3 boys under the age of 3. Joey is a high-performance leader and applied sports scientist in elite soccer, currently Director of Sports Performance and Science at Sporting KC. He holds a master's in applied exercise science from Concordia University and a bachelor's in exercise science from Grand Canyon University. Joey is dual certified by the NSCA, with additional credentials from NASM, Exos, NSPA, and FRC. Joey's work has been featured by the National Strength and Conditioning Association and in Human Kinetics Strength Training for Soccer. When Joey's not diving into the world of sports performance, you can find him enjoying time with his wife and 3 boys, enjoying the outdoors and exploring all that is Kansas City. Welcome, Joey.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to do this with you.
So glad to have you. And we've had Natalie and Mitch, and now you. We've got 3 more episodes in this generational health mini-series, and it's been so rich, and I know you're just going to add to that today. I start off with a question, as you know, at the beginning of each of the podcasts. And the question is what is one practice, habit, or discipline that you have engaged with recently that is helping you continue to move in a healthy direction?
Yeah, I love that question. I'm also privileged to have listened to all of your podcasts up until this point and to be able to think about that question ahead of time. But it's one that I've thought about and tried to implement on a regular basis. And just with the way my life is right now with 3 little boys, we'll dive into it, but transition in my work. One thing that I've really tried to implement is based on the idea of just trying to stay present when I need to stay present. And so that is writing down what I need to do for the day. And really it's just a thought dump, but I do that every morning. Sometimes it's at nighttime, but I try to do it first thing when I wake up, and it just helps me clear my head and give me the space to really know what I need to get done that day, because I feel like there's a never-ending list of people I need to talk to, opportunities that I need to seek out, things that I need to get done. And realistically, it's not possible to get all that done in any day or any week. So I've really tried to just write down what needs to get done on that day, so I'm not leaving anyone hanging, and then I'm able to accomplish what I need to accomplish.
Love that, Joey. As you say that, being present is so hard to do when you've got so many people competing for your time. And to be able to take things out of your head and put it on paper allows you to be present. That's really, really, really helpful. Talk to me a little bit about being present. 3 boys. I mean, just saying 3 boys, I mean, that communicates a lot. But when I finish the sentence, 3 boys under 3,
Yep.
at least until, sometime in the next couple of months, it'll be 3 under 3. How do you do that? How do you be present at work, present with your family, present with the Lord? You talked a little bit about how you start your day, but is it a real conscious effort for you to, when you're home, to be present with Brittany and the boys and not still be at work, at least in your mind?
Yeah, no, 100% it is. I think of everything just in seasons of life. In the season of life that I'm in right now, it feels like I really have to be intentional in prioritizing that, because I don't have as many places that I need to be, but I feel the pressure of be in a lot of places, and so it's not so much that I have to be at work at a certain time with the nature of the work that I'm in and it being the off season of the MLS season. There's not a lot of places that I have to be, and so I'm always thinking about what do I need to get done during the day, and if I'm not able to prioritize, okay, I need to commit this hour to get these three things done, then I feel like I'm pulling my computer out way too much throughout the day. I'm on my phone way too much throughout the day, and I'm actually getting less done as opposed to if I can just prioritize one chunk of time. And so I try to be as present as possible, just to be able to not have my boys see me on my laptop, see me on my phone. I don't want to be able to say no. I don't want to have to say no, especially when my oldest is coming to me and saying, "Hey, Daddy, will you play with me?" I want to be able to prioritize those things. And so right now, our youngest, I mean, as you know, but we have our baby Grant, and he's 6 weeks old. So there's a lot of, even for our boys, there's a lot of attention that's being pulled between mom and dad in taking care of a newborn. And so it's really just, I think that habit is just me trying to do the best that I can to still prioritize and get done what I need to get done, but also to just enjoy the season of having a newborn at home and two little boys that are not in full-time school.
Yeah. Joey, you've had a very successful career as director of sports performance and science at Sporting KC, and you out of college, they hired you to be the director of sports performance at the academy level, and then you were promoted to the second team, and then you were promoted to team one, to the first team. And if I could look back and I could have wrote a job description for you, maybe when you were in high school, like not even knowing these positions existed, I would probably would have wrote that for you. So, so you've been living that dream, so to speak, right? I
Yep.
mean, it's
Yeah.
right in the sweet spot of who you are and what you're interested in. It uses all your gifts. Yet you've made a decision to step away from your dream job, your dream career. Talk to us a little bit about that. Like how does somebody have their favorite job, like all the things you do day to day, and at the same time have a conviction that it's time to move on?
Yeah. I mean, I tell people this all the time. And I have told people this for a long time, that I really love what I do for work. And I say that knowing that I have peers, I have friends, I have family members that don't get to say the same thing. And I think there are a lot of benefits that come with the job that I've been able to have, and it's one that allows me to be social, one that allows me to continue to learn, continue to grow, endless resources to do those things, all while experiencing the glamour of professional sports, and being able to have game days and traveling to awesome cities and seeing cool stadiums. And there's a lot of things that if you told me as a high schooler you're going to get to do these things, I also would have been like, man, that's awesome. That's what I want to do for sure. The challenge with professional sports, and I think it's interesting, and I have a different perspective. You and I were even talking about the Colorado Rockies, I think last time you were out visiting in Kansas City, just with the not so great season they've had. And from my perspective, I'm thinking about the staff members, and I'm thinking about the people who are there for 164 games away from their family and not having success, and the trials that you go through in those moments. And that's what really mounted up for me over the years was the moments that I've missed. And so it's about being present for my family, and that's probably the driver, but it's the moments that I've missed with my family. And I don't say my family just Brittany and our three boys, but you and mom, and, both of your 65th birthday parties, not being able to attend, parents' days where we celebrate our grandparents, things like that, where the professional sports season doesn't stop, and so that's been a journey for me to just navigate, and it's actually made the decision really easy in the moment because I felt that weight for years, many years, and it's really came to a head. And I think having our third child was just like, you know what, I don't want to keep living this journey of missing out on these things and not bringing our boys to see their cousins and see their grandparents. Um,
Hmm.
and so, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think part of it's really difficult, but also it's a trade-off, and the trade-off is, I think, going to be really rich and exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, when we operate out of convictions, or I remember the book Essentialism,
Yeah.
when we kind of think through the priorities in our life, it makes the seemingly hard decisions easier to make because we're stepping into our value system, right? We're stepping into things we value, and not that you don't value working in professional soccer, but there's different tiers of value that we make decisions through, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, when I coach men that are in some type of transition, I say that it makes the transition easier leaving something when you have a catch on the other side, when you know what is coming. You made the decision to step aside from professional soccer in this season of life. Everything is for now, right? You never know what the Lord's going to do 5 years from now. But you made a decision to step away before you really understood what the catch was, like what you're going to be doing. And we don't need to deep dive into that, but how did you do that, Joe? Like you knew that there's a third baby coming. You're well taken care of in professional sports. You know you've got a budget. You know where the money's coming from. You know where the money's going. Yet you kind of took a step into the abyss, into the unknown. How did you do that? Was that scary for you at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, I am currently doing it, so it is a bit scary.
Okay.
I think that moment of I think I just have a lot of faith that, God has a plan, but also I think there's been a lot from our upbringing that has just always pointed us towards just take that next step. And
Yeah.
in taking that next step, it's a lot of things in life come through networking and relationships and connections. And I've seen that in my own life. I saw that in my transition to Kansas City. I saw that in my transition to going to college in Arizona. Um, God was always one step ahead, and I think that I was also very diligent in doing things that prepared me for whatever that next step was. And part of that, it was just leveraging connections and people and talking to people. And so over the last 3 months, 4 months, I've just really, really dove into that and had conversations with a lot of people.
Mm.
Um, so much so that I had a coworker, one of the good buddies of mine who's on my staff. He told me, he said, "Man, I think you're going to be busier than you were even working at Sporting." He said, "Just
Mm.
knowing you and knowing everything that you're interested in doing and your passions." And uh, that's kind of the excitement I have, is that's what I feel like, even though I don't have anything really concrete on what the next step is going to look like. I just feel like there's a lot of confidence in knowing that if I keep going down the path that I'm on,
Hmm.
and if I'm willing to do things that maybe, I guess, willing to not say no, and then find that balance of when I need to say no, but do things that maybe aren't my number one passion, and understanding that I'll get there over time. I think that's kind of where I've been able to, put my mind around.
Yeah. There's something about in when you're making a change and you're not sure exactly what the catch is, what's on the other side, is that if you put yourself in traffic, in other words, you don't just sit there hoping the phone rings, or that you've done a great job of networking and hoping that people will call you, even though they might and they have.
Yeah.
Um, you have put yourself in traffic, meaning that you've just picked up the phone and you've had coffee with people, not knowing even necessarily why you're picking up the phone or having coffee, other than just saying, I'm in this new season and just want to have conversations with people. And that is so instructive. I'm so proud of you, Joey, for just putting yourself out there
Yeah. Well,
in
thanks.
so many ways. Yeah. In your upbringing, you saw mom and me transition a couple of times. You saw me leave the financial services business and step into kind of a self-employed thing, and then into pastoral ministry. And maybe that's probably the biggest pivot that you saw us make, is buying a franchise, stepping away from a very secure job in financial services, and then stepping in to be a pastor. And as you know, that didn't, you know, it on paper it didn't work out too well. we believe it worked out great because we were right in the center of God's will.
Yeah.
But what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think the first when you left the financial industry and you started Garage Tech, um, how long did you have Garage Tech? Was it 7 years?
I think it was 7 years, and we bought it actually before I stepped down as a financial consultant. So
Okay.
6, 7 years total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was pretty young, and then but I do remember. I mean, I remember helping a lot with Garage Tech. I was pretty young when we first started. I remember putting out flyers, in and around the holidays for marketing. I remember, going to the warehouse and unloading trucks and organizing and kind of just doing a little bit of everything, because it
Did
was.
we pay you, or was it just child labor? Like, would we get arrested for that today?
You might. It is 2025.
That's
It's
right.
a little bit different these days. And I say all that too. I remember it not really with any sort of emotion attached to it from that standpoint. It was just kind of a part of what we did because I also think there was a lot of things in our family that were just things that we did, and so it was just helping out and we didn't do things in isolation. We did things I think as a family unit, and so because that was our family business, it was just something that we helped out with. I think what was probably a bit more impactful was the transition from Garage Tech and kind of the resultant effect of everything that occurred and your transition into full-time ministry. And probably because it was during the formation years of my life. I think I was 14, 13, 14 during
Hmm.
that time period.
Yeah.
Um, I think with all of that and your transition, Natalie had just gotten married. Mitch had just left for college. So I
Hmm.
also, in one summer, really became an only child going into high
Hmm.
school, with you changing careers, and us, moving to a different home. And so I don't think I think there's been a lot over the years that I've been able to unpack and kind of just think about, just in terms of the growth that I guess that I experienced during that time. Um, that I don't know that I can point out like, hey, this is the one thing that I learned from that experience. I think it was just a lot to process.
Yeah. That was a season of trial for mom and me. Just like, I mean, even Natalie getting married, it was joyful, excited, but it's hard to marry off your first child, and Mitch heading out to college, and then just things going on in your life at the time.
Yeah.
It was a time of trial. Did it feel like a time of like trial for you as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think I was just finding my way. I mean, obviously, there were things that I was dealing with, as, an adolescent trying to find his way and I think experiencing discipline from you guys in those moments with my own trials in the midst of everything that you guys had going on. The biggest thing I think in unpacking it as I've gotten older is also having a lot of grace and understanding and feeling of like putting myself in your guys' shoes now, and I feel like having three boys, boys or not, but having three children, you just, me personally, I feel like I'm always very introspective and trying to be very reflective in how I'm thinking about my own life and what I want to impart upon them. Even though they are so young, it makes me think about our upbringing a lot.
Yeah. You're our youngest child, as we talked about. Natalie's 6 years older. Mitch is 4 years older, which is crazy because it doesn't, as the older you all get, the closer in age you seem.
Yeah.
Like 6 years was a massive gap, right, between like 12 and 6 or
Yep.
15 and 9. What did you enjoy about being the youngest child? And then what are some of the wounds and scars that you're healing from still from being the youngest child?
Yeah.
Now don't throw Mitch or Natalie under the bus here, but yes,
Yep.
or me. No, you can throw me under the bus. That's what we're doing here.
Well, I mean, I think there's also perspective, right? And seeing Nat and her family with, five kids and kind of having that big age gap. Mitch's boys are closer together. But, seeing her oldest to, her fourth or her fifth, I see that big age gap and I now chuckle about it and think about all the things that they did to me or tell me that they did to me when I was a little kid and, telling me that, John LA would wear a dress so that they could put me on people's porches on Halloween, and just Obviously, that was the era, right? The Broncos were good during that era
Yeah.
with John Elway.
Let's
So
throw Natalie under the bus there. I don't think Mitch had anything to do with
yeah,
that. It
that's
was all
probably true.
Natalie.
It was the older child, the oldest child, I should say.
Oldest child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness too, I see how the effects of birth order make sense. Right? I think it just is natural, with how the parents respond to the firstborn. Um, they will always be the first child. Doesn't mean that you love them anymore. There's just a different dynamic. Ours was even more unique with Nat being the only girl in our family. But with me having such a big age gap from them, there were pros and cons. And I think some of the pros, I experienced a lot with Mitch specifically. When I was going into middle school and he's in high school, Mitch was super inclusive. Same when I'm in high school and he's in college. There were so many instances, he's taken me up, snowboarding 10 plus times every season with him and his buddies. You only got two calls about one broken arm and stitches.
Exactly. When that phone would ring, like in the middle of the day when you guys are skiing, I'm not going to answer it.
Yeah.
It's, something's broken or needs stitches.
And I can imagine Mitch, he's like, oh no, I'd have to call dad again and let him know, Joey's in the ER. I think I was in the ER the first time I went snowboarding after getting my cast off, and it was just, but that was kind of just the reality of trying to keep up with him and his friends. They were always, as boys do, we're doing crazy stuff in the street. He's putting me in the radio flyer wagon and throwing me down the hill outside of our house in Ptarmigan. But I was
Oh
wearing a
my
helmet,
gosh.
so it was fine.
Yeah, I remember I think that's what mom always said is just, wear a helmet, like
Yeah,
as if
wear a
that's going
helmet.
to help you
Yep.
going down that hill. Do you, sorry, we'll digress a little bit, but I remember, and you can, I sometimes I wonder if I remember the stories correctly or if I'm making them up. But I do remember, my memory says that we were in the backyard, you and me and Mitch. I don't know if James was with us or just the three of us. And we had PVC pipes and we were shooting bottle rockets at each other across the backyard. And Nancy said, like, or mom said, like, what are you doing? Like, and I said, well, they've got goggles on. We had goggles on. So we said, do you remember that at all? Am
Oh
I?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
was a normal occurrence. Those are the fun stories, but also, I think there was a lot of benefit and growth in being able to learn from an older sibling like that. The gap between Nat and I was much different. I'm in elementary school and she's in high school. She's in college
Yeah.
and I'm going into middle school, things like that. But also her relationship with Jared, and being married when I'm, before I'm even going into high school, it's like I gained a second brother, at a young age and had another brother throughout high school, which was awesome. I think as the youngest, I also had to learn probably to do things on my own later. I think everyone just assumed that I knew how to do things or, assumed that someone would help me do things. And people were always, what I felt, as I got older was that people were speaking for me and things like that. Uh,
Mm,
but again, that was
yeah.
something I had to work through for myself.
Is there anything that comes to mind, Joey, that you had to learn on your own that was, and maybe mom and I are like, we're maybe we're done parenting, in a like a very intentional way and didn't teach you things that we taught Mitch and Natalie. What would be some of those things that come to mind?
Yeah, I think honestly, finances is probably one of those
Mm,
things.
mm-hmm.
Um, or wasn't that it wasn't taught. I think it was just kind of there's layers that maybe were taught when I was too young, and so I didn't really pick up on those and carry those into adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think similarly, there was probably also an element, where it was kind of like, "Hey, Mitch, can you help Joey with this?" And Mitch is great in that way, and still to this day he is. Um, but I went away to college, as you know, out of state. And I think that's when a lot of that really, came to light for me, and also having to kind of figure out things on my own. It was probably a really, really good growth experience that I wasn't even anticipating from that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely see that. And that's probably a good caution to parents that maybe have a bigger gap between their oldest and their youngest. Because I've actually heard parents say this that like, man, like I've got three kids out of the house, and I've got, whatever, one still in middle school or high school, and I'm just kind of ready to move on and parent adults type of thing. And it's not that they don't enjoy being a parent, but like just for parents to like stay in the game and make sure that the things that you taught the oldest kids that you're also bringing the younger kids along. I can see that, even though I never felt like done. Like I so enjoyed your high school years, and when you played basketball and soccer and all of that. Even though there were some rough patches and things that were where we butted heads on, like I never felt done with you, and nor did mom. But you can kind of step out of the game and not teach the things. That's a very good point. When you were 4, we were teaching Natalie and Mitch at 10 and 8 about how to read their Bible, how to balance a budget, that type of thing. So really, I think that's really helpful for our audience, Joey.
Yeah, no, I hope it is, and it's also like it makes sense too, right? It's within seasons of life, and the
Hmm.
seasons of life that you guys were in is, as I'm going into high school, your first daughter, your only daughter, your first child just got married, your middle child's going to college,
Hmm.
you're starting another career transition, right? Like there's just a lot I think that was going on in that season. But that's not to say again, as if I think one thing that I do really appreciate, and I say one thing, there's a lot, but as I was preparing and thinking about this podcast and a conversation with you is, you always, I think, communicate to us in a way of never being a victim, of anything, that we always have a choice, to learn for ourselves. And I think just really, instead of having a feeling of, well, mom and dad didn't really teach me that, having the perspective of, well, they did, but also, were you ready to be taught? Are you in a position where you're willing to learn? And so I think as I also look back on it, there's a lot of things that I had going on in my life at that time, where it's not oh, mom and dad just didn't teach the youngest. It's a good reminder for myself and for anybody that every party has a responsibility in life, no matter your age, as in your upbringing and as a part of a family unit.
Yeah, that's so good, Joey. What are uh, what are some of the biggest takeaways from your childhood as we engage in this generational health podcast? And we believe that one generation impacts future generations, impacts it in positive ways, impacts it in negative ways. In any of the 5 life domains, wherever you feel like it's at the top of mind for you, what are some of the ways that you were impacted by your upbringing imperfectly that you are carrying forward with your kids?
Yeah. There's obviously a lot there, right, in terms of the five
There's
life
a lot there.
domains, and being able to, I think, put those in tiers or a hierarchy of what's important doesn't really feel fair. I feel like there's just maybe if I'll kind of go what's on my mind,
Hmm.
and one thing you and I have talked about with just living a prioritized life, and going through that assessment, that you've provided is it changes based on what season of life you're in, based on the circumstances that you're in that affects your priorities. And I think one of the biggest things that I think about a lot is because it's first at the forefront of my mind, especially in my relationship with Brittany, and we talk about it a lot because maybe her, whether personality or upbringing or just feeling around this is slightly different, and it's not wrong or it's not right. It's just how I perceive it is what's the right way to maybe it's productivity, it's habits, it's discipline, all put into one. And I think that stems from two things. And I think there's kind of a lot again as you unpack from your upbringing. Like there were things along the lines of when we were, in the summertime that you didn't want us to sleep in, and I think about that a lot. And it never really felt like that big of a deal, though I had a lot of friends who maybe did sleep, they'd sleep until 10 a.m. on a Saturday. And I can remember you coming into our room and, waking us up, and it wasn't, throwing the lights on and ripping the covers off us, but it was more just kind of helping establish, hey, there's a new day. Um, it also wasn't, when we were kids, it wasn't, hey, you need to go mow the yard. It was, hey, there's a new day. There's plenty to do. Go to the pool. Go to, we were privileged to live at a country club. Go hit golf balls on the driving range. Like ride your bikes there. Just take advantage of the day, seize the day. Um, and so that is stuck with me through the years and for sure into adulthood. And I think about it probably to a T. Where it's like you can't even. I feel like I can't relax. There's always something that needs to get done. But I think that's real strength. Having the balance with that is probably good with Brittany too, of just also finding rhythms to relax,
Hmm.
um, and be able to be present, as we mentioned before. So that's one that comes to mind
Yeah.
off of my mind.
Is there any downside to that, Joey? I mean, there's a balance. Brittany's a balance to you. Mom
Yeah.
is a balance to me. But yeah, any downside to that high productivity mindset?
I'm sure there is. I mean, one that comes to mind is burnout, right?
Hmm.
If you're never if you're just trying to do too much, and you're not finding rhythms of life to be able to pause and enjoy, whether that's throughout your day,
Hmm.
um, I think it leads to burnout, and so being able to be intentional with why you're waking up in the morning, and not waking up too early in the morning. Obviously, I've made a career in the health and fitness journey, and so being
Hmm.
able waking up super early in the morning and burning the candle at the other end and going to bed super late at night and having habits that also don't support getting stuff done and being um, the coworker, the employee, the
Hmm.
husband, the father that you want to be. I
Hmm.
think you have to have that balance. And so if you don't have perspective of balance,
Hmm.
then you can run into issues.
Yeah, that's good. Do you know a harder worker than your mother?
No, she can't stop. Right. I mean, you guys were also fortunate, with I think one blessing of living out of state is that we get extended chunks of time of you guys in our home.
Hmm.
And so just looking at it like that, I see that as an adult with how my mom knew growing up, but how well she serves, and she's got 6 loads of laundry. She, Brittany and I were joking, we're like, I don't think you guys were here for maybe 10 days. I didn't touch the dishwasher once. It was like, you look over and she already ran a load of dishes. The water bill's through the roof, but she's always getting the dishes washed.
Well, you're welcome because when I come out there, I go to the coffee shop. I don't do anything. Like it's
That's
I
not true. You mow the grass.
I mow the grass. Yeah, like once in 10 days.
Yeah.
It's yeah. But she's just a. What'd you learn from that? Just observing mom, just seeing her serve and work and like it's in every environment, right?
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've just learned that's also her way of loving people,
Mm,
and,
yeah.
and she's a servant. And so I think that's where it comes from. It's not that she's also efficient. If she needs to take a nap, she can take a nap, but she wants to serve people. And so I think if she's not told what to do, she'll find ways that she can serve, and I remember,
Yeah.
even witnessing that growing up, especially being younger and going with her a lot of places, she's always bringing people meals, after someone had a loss in their family, had to go to the hospital, had a baby. I mean,
Oh
you
yeah.
name it.
She's always there.
Everybody. She's always there. She's bringing them a meal. She's popping over and she's cleaning their house.
Mm,
She's doing things that people don't ex people don't expect you to do because they're over the top, and she's doing that for everybody.
yeah, that's good. Mom and I are complete opposites, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Like we're complete opposites. We got married many years ago, and she came from a certain great family tradition. I came from a great family, certain traditions. We brought different preferences, different habits, different lenses in the way we see life, the way we recreate, what we eat, and all of that. And we did it imperfectly. Like we merged into marriage and raised three kids so imperfectly. And I've thought about this a lot, Joey, that every marriage, it's not just two people coming together that love each other, but what they realize maybe a year into marriage, maybe it's a day into marriage, that's like, oh, like she was raised in a completely different environment than I was raised in.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, it wasn't wrong. Neither was right or wrong. They're different. And it took mom and I like a lot of years, quite frankly, because we didn't have the tools on how to navigate that to be able to find harmony, to and mostly me towards her, to really not try to change her, but to like understand her, be curious, and draw out of her what God's already put in there, rather than having her fit into my mold of the way that I was raised. I remember the first Christmas, mom tells the story, is that she made Christmas cookies. So excited. And my response was like, none of these are the cookies that my mom made. If you're listening, take note. Don't don't ever make that criticism. It's not helpful. But
Don't have that comparison.
yeah, exactly. So you grew up in a home, Joseph, that there was obviously a lot of love, but there was also some tension, and it started in our marriage. I'm high strung, mom's laid back, and that type of thing. What do you remember from your days growing up, and how your mother and I communicated and interacted, lived, enjoyed, fought together? It's a
Yeah.
lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, I
What
think
stands
for,
out?
again, it's interesting. I feel like all that comes full circle in life. As now I'm a husband, and now as I'm a father, I think I have a different perspective, and just even thinking back on those things, because you don't really think back too much on the things that you're not really going through. At least that's what I've
Mm,
experienced in my life.
okay.
If I hadn't married Brittany, I'm not considering as much, the relationship that you and mom had. Um,
Hmm.
but I start to notice things in myself that I start to wonder, okay, where did that come from, good and bad? And there's a lot of good that I think about with mom and your relationship, and things that you guys modeled, um, that probably weren't just intentional, modeling, but it was just the way that you guys interacted with each other. And I think, from your perspective or my perspective on you, first and foremost was how to be respectful and how to treat a woman. Again, those are things that I have been able to give on to Brittany, that she has been appreciative of, things like bringing her flowers on random days, things that I notice, that you're doing throughout
Mm,
our upbringing.
mm,
You guys, going to dates together, you bringing your family on work road trips, things like that, where you start to notice there's an inclusion, right? It wasn't that you were living one life and she was living another life. And even with friendships, right? I don't mean that in a different way, but just with friendships and in work and all those things. But also with, I think the way that you guys served people was another big one. Um, and I think as long as I can remember, we always had people in our home, and that changed, the types of people and the different reasons over the years. Um, but again, that was a perspective, because I know, it takes a lot for you guys to be on the same page as a couple, especially when you have kids and things are going on in life, to have people over. It's not just as simple as, hey, let's have some friends over. It's let's host people and let's invite people into our home. Um, and so being able to witness that, I think, were good things that I was able to pick up on. Um, I think the last thing is also a big one, but also just twofold. One, how do you ask for forgiveness when you're in the wrong? And I
mm,
noticed that, as with any marriage or any relationship, there's always going to be tension for different things.
mhm.
And so witnessing reconciliation, I think, was a big one. Um, but then also, I think what I had mentioned earlier of just, and I thought about it even today, like Brittany and I were trying to get out of the house, and there was just baby crying, boys not wanting to put shoes on, just chaos, and Brittany's wanted me to go get dressed so she can get dressed, but we can't leave the baby out there with the older boys, and just a moment of tension, right? And I think that's just the real moment. And I'm back there getting dressed, and I'm frustrated, but in the reality, it's thinking about, again, on a principle that I feel like was modeled but taught as well, of being able to just say, whatever's going on in the moment, I'm frustrated, and I'm sure that I had something to do with it.
Mm,
And I feel like even just being able to own that and accept that and not feel
mm,
the need to win or be right,
mm, mm.
I think is a big one. Which is kind of what I mentioned earlier with that victim mindset, a little bit of just
Yeah,
take yourself out of it because I'm sure that you didn't do something perfectly.
yeah, that's so good, Joey. Recently God has helped me like name that attitude um, with just two words, and one is just staying curious. Like when somebody, would it be a spouse or a coworker or somebody says something that
Yeah.
like rubs us wrong and makes us frustrated, to be, instead of like immediately casting judgment on what their motivation is, to stay curious as to like, maybe what they said isn't really what I heard. Stay curious. And then the other word is compassion, to have compassion that everybody has a bad day,
Yeah.
you know, right? Especially in a household with three little guys under age three,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the spiritual domain for a couple of minutes.
Yep.
The you grew up. We started going to church, and mom and I started really pursuing our faith in 1994. And you were born when? 92?
Yep.
So you pretty much grew up in the church.
Yeah.
The church in Fort Collins and the church in Windsor. And then in high school, you kind of had your own bunch of Christian friends at a different church, youth group. How did that impact you? How was that? How was that upbringing? Was it? Did you feel like the faith was your own? That your mom and dad's faith was your own, or was there a period of time where you went along with it, but it really became your own at a certain point?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's when you a lot of times when you grow up in the church, I feel like there are you hear different stories, right? And I always remember thinking of people growing up who had some radical testimony. Like I lived this whole life for so long, until I was, an adult, and I was doing this, doing that, or this happened, and then I became a Christian and everything changed. I think the thing that I've navigated is I know when I became a Christian, I know when I first had the realization of who Jesus Christ is and what he means to me, and that I wanted a relationship with him. And I remember where I was today and why I wanted to make that decision. But I think there was a lot of growth in that relationship with Jesus that still occurred and had to occur as I matured. And so I think that's probably the thing that I've thought about even as a father of boys who, Lord willing, choose to follow Jesus. And if that happens at a young age, because I do hope they grow up in the church,
Hmm.
that you're still growing and maturing, and that doesn't, just because you've chosen to follow Jesus doesn't make you excusable from, decisions that don't represent that, and I think there were choices and things that, I struggled with later on in college and thinking about, was I really saved? If I was saved, why did I act that way? And so I think that was part of growing up in the church is just growing and maturing, and and having to learn those things. But I'm so grateful. I think last piece with that, I'm so grateful for the foundation that growing up in the church set for me, and being able to always have something to fall back onto, in my understanding and belief. And that's surrounded from Sunday school. It's surrounded from going to a Christian school, having Christian coaches, mentors, people that poured into me, outside of just our family. I think growing up in the church, you're also privileged to those relationships.
Yeah, talk about that for a moment, Joey. That's a really good point. You had many different Christian mentors, whether it be the neighbor that you were meeting in our basement for a little while, whether it be your basketball coach, assistant basketball coach who was a youth leader at a different church, one of the youth leaders in our church in Fort Collins that lived with us at times. How important was that you had other men to lean into at times, maybe where you didn't feel like maybe you could lean into your dad or your mom? as it pertains to your faith and other things?
Yeah, I mean it's huge, and I really do reflect on those men a lot, especially in my role as a coach, and thinking about the impact that they've had on me, and wanting to also impart that impact on others.
Mm.
Um, and I love, I mean, I'd just say their names. I mean, Derek Jones was my basketball coach in junior high. Joe Packard was my basketball coach and youth pastor in high school. Cyrus He was my soccer coach in high school. And Chuck Howard was my strength conditioning coach, my first exposure to strength conditioning, but also my boss as I transitioned into the career path of sports performance. And all of those men at different points in my journey had different impact, and it's just really cool to see how God places people in your life at the right moments. And so I
Yeah.
think having people like that as a growing young man with passions and being able to relate with those passions. I was obviously passionate about basketball, passionate about soccer, and being able to experience that in a way that allowed me to express emotion, but also to be taught, self-control. Why does that matter in the context of basketball? Because we're representatives of who God called us to be. And I remember instances of that in high school, where we had bad attitudes on our basketball team, really good team. Um, and our coach, first practice back, he made us write letters to the school where we had bad attitudes, we're John at the ref and things like that. Little things that um, at the time seemed trivial, but made a big impact. Um, but
Yeah.
also, as a parent, I'm sure it gives you a lot of confidence and comfort in knowing, because you spend a lot of time with, when there's sports, you spend a lot of time with coaches, and knowing that your kids are surrounded by people that, you trust to be good influences.
Yeah. All those men that you mentioned, I didn't know Chuck. I met him a couple times, but I trusted. And I think the potential downside as a dad is that, putting your kid in a Christian school, having good Christian mentors is so thankful for it and wouldn't do it differently. But if you're not careful, I could say Joey's in good hands,
Yeah.
and therefore I don't need to be as intentional. I don't think I did that, at least consciously, but I've witnessed that before. So I think the real takeaway is that there's a season where parents, you're just not going to be the loudest voice in your child's life, and pray and for men like that, and encourage them to, don't be afraid of encouraging them to go to a different youth group or engage with a different mentor. So I'm thankful for those men because they stepped in at a time um, where I needed them in my corner.
What's cool, I mean, yeah, it's everything happens in God's timing. But again, it's a good reminder to know that you can be that for other people. Like I said, I really reflect on that as a parent, but also again in my profession as a coach, and being able to be around young men in particular.
Hmm.
Um, so
Yeah. I want to talk about perseverance because it goes across all five life domains. We talked a little bit about perseverance and just being intentional and having habits and practices. When you moved to Kansas City, and it was just a year before you were married, right?
yep.
And you had leaned into me to help you maybe find a couple of churches that were solid to check out. And you checked out a church in, I think, downtown Kansas City. And there was so much good about it, but you just had a hard time like breaking in. Whether they didn't make it easy for you and Brittany to connect. But what I saw was over the next 10 years is a perseverance, working on Sundays, traveling on Saturday nights, knowing that you want to be in a church community, yet you didn't have the time or the bandwidth to really invest. And this particular church wasn't it make they were not making it easy for you to step in.
Yeah.
Um, Talk to us a little bit about that journey, Joey, and how that started out, and then where you're at today in the vibrant community that you're a part of.
Yeah. Um, I think it was tough. You mentioned a lot just in terms of my schedule, and that is kind of what we talked about just with my transition, right? I wanted to be able to raise my boys in the church, and it was really difficult. There's, oftentimes I'm traveling for a game, and we get back at 3 a.m. And if I want to go to church the next morning, I need to wake up and get the boys there, and it felt like a grind to do what I felt like we were called to do. Um, but also, I think going through the process of getting into a community group and then not being able to have that community group work out, the leader leaves, and then going back to a church and them saying, well, you need to take a class to get into another community group, and maybe feeling like they're not giving you the same reciprocation in terms of effort to get you involved. Um, but that class that they want you to be involved in, you can't make because you're out of town for another game. And so that cycle for a long time was just really discouraging, and led us to the point where we started to look for another church. Um, Ironically, that coincided with COVID. And we probably spent a year and a half in and around COVID where we did not leave our house on Sundays. We got in the rhythm of what a lot of people did, and we were doing, house church, if you will, watching, the sermons online. And part of that was initially feeling uncomfortable due to my line of work. And, we were tested a lot for COVID because they did that for every professional sports league. But then the other part of it was just comfort because we weren't feeling like we were known or that we knew people at the church. Though that's what we craved and that's what we wanted. And I think that's what was modeled for both of us in our upbringing. And that's why we place so much value in it. And I think, again, it came down to the point of finally realizing, okay, we went and we shopped other churches after COVID, but we liked the church we were at. It was a lot for us, even with coming from different church backgrounds, to be able to find the right type of worship, the right vibe with the pastor, the right ambiance in terms of just aesthetics and things that maybe aren't that important but matter on your first impression. And the church we were at was all those things. And so we made the conscious choice of, instead of being frustrated with the church and feeling like they're not letting us in, are we doing everything in our power to be involved and be known? And I think that came down to, what do you need to do to be known? And that's insert yourself into the traffic, like you said earlier. And inserting ourselves into the traffic at church was, hey, can we serve? Is there anything that we can do to, get on the monthly calendar? And they worked with us. My schedule wasn't like I could do every fourth Sunday because I might be out of town. So they just told us, tell us what weekend you guys want to do, and we'll pencil you in. We can use that. And it felt like that was, obviously it was a God thing to open doors, but it just was a snowball effect of meeting people. And, the next thing you know, someone's asking you to be a part of their community group, and you go to their community group and you enjoy the people, and there's 15 other kids running around, and it is community, where it's really people who are in the same stage of life, just trying to do the best that they can. And so I think that perseverance was hard, but has been worth it.
Yeah, there you go again. You and Brittany did not take the play the victim card,
Yeah,
even though it was easy to be tempted to go that direction. You got into the traffic. You were intentional and said, "What can we do to insert ourselves into community?"
yeah,
And it's paid off big time, hasn't it?
yeah. It's huge when you don't live near family. It's huge to have a community of people who can come around you and support you and pray with you. And so it's been a huge blessing for us.
What's the name of the church?
Redeemer Fellowship in
So just
Johnson
a
County.
in what?
In Johnson County.
Okay, just a shout out to Redeemer Church in Johnson County. That something that I've observed from afar is that that church has membership, and in order to dedicate your children, you need to be a member. I love that, respect that. There was, with your travel schedule, you just weren't able to go to the membership classes.
Yeah.
I mean, you were in a perfect place to really not be a part of that community. But the pastor said, it's Mark.
Yep, Pastor Mark.
Mark said, how about this? I will come to your house
Yep.
and we will do the membership class, me and you and Brittany. And that is Christ-like. So I just want to shout out there's convictions the church has that membership's important, but they're opening the door and seeing that not everybody has the same schedule, and we want Joey and Brittany to belong.
Yeah.
So we're going to do whatever's in our power to help them belong.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I think we were grateful, and I again, that's the reciprocated feeling of that. I feel like they were so gracious in being willing to do all that for us. Um, but we also felt the weight of following through and continuing to reach out and continuing to try to serve, and not, again, not feeling like the church was slighting us because we weren't in a community group or because we couldn't make the membership class. It just was building a relationship and asking, and um, they were awesome about it.
Yeah. Busy house, committed to following Jesus. Church is an important part of your life. The church community is a part of your life. Church is not just the building, it's the people, and you guys are really engaging there. Um, you're not just in the sports performance world, but it's important for you to work out, to be fit. You just ran your second half marathon. It wasn't good enough just to run your second half marathon. You wanted to beat your last time, and you were a little disappointed because you didn't beat it by enough. You work out pretty much every day, at least Monday through Friday, unless there's something that comes up. Why is that important to you? Was there anything that was taught or maybe caught in your upbringing that has carried forward into this stage of life?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much there. Again, I think a lot that we haven't even unpacked from the habits and the discipline standpoint, but also just health and fitness, right? I mean, that was something that you were always passionate about, and it looked different over the years based on different things that you were doing. But I mean, I remember in high school, junior high, I mean, we were doing workouts in the basement regularly. I think you ask any of my high school coaches, anyone that was around me in high school, like I was always doing the most, wanting to be the best. And I think those were things that stem from a lot of things that you taught us and encouraged us to do, and I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I think for me personally, it came from an athletic background, and maybe not really being where I wanted to be or hoped to be, in terms of the club soccer teams that I was on. And you just encouraging me to continue to do the things that I can control, and that's work your hardest to be your best, and so I think that was an avenue that, as there was interest there, it was a passion of yours, and so you were all about it, and buying the P90X DVDs and getting dumbbells in the basement, pull-up bar, we were doing all of that. But I also remember rhythms of that on vacation, of just exercise, you were always either going to the hotel gym or you're going on a run. Again, a lot of times I was behind. It looked different for me because, Nat and Mitch might be running with you and maybe I'm staying back with mom. But that grew and changed even between you and I as I got older.
Do you remember the one vacation we were on? I think it was Pagosa Springs or someplace like that. We were staying in some motel, and then we heard down like behind it. I don't know if we heard music or we heard like weights clanking.
Yeah, it was Ure.
It was
Ure.
Uray.
Yeah.
It was like pretty much right. I think it was probably one of the first CrossFit gyms in the country. And we walked down there and we did a workout with them,
Yep. Yep.
didn't we?
Yeah. That was Mitch was in college. It was in the summertime. I was in high school. Yeah, we went down there. I think you were just kind of starting to hear about CrossFit. You weren't going to, 970 CrossFit yet at this point. But yeah, I remember that. I remember also doing a part of the WOD, or the workout of the day that they had them doing, was a run to finish. I don't remember how long it was, but running at whatever altitude your ray is was brutal.
Yeah, and you and Mitch crushed it. I don't remember that Natalie did it with us. Um, don't remember that.
Yeah.
But by the way, it is your fault that I've been doing CrossFit for 13 years. Do you know that?
Why is that?
Well, it's your fault that I started it. It may not be your fault that I've been doing it for 13
Yep.
years, but you knew that that I was starting to learn about just functional fitness a little bit, and I think I shared with you I saw something about this CrossFit thing,
Yep.
and then somehow you came across it that there was a gym in Windsor,
Yeah.
and it was Norco CrossFit, and I thought, huh, like what is that?
Yep.
So I drove up there that same day, and I walked in there, and the next day I joined it. So by the way, for those of you listening, that does not mean that Joey Hardy is a raving fan of CrossFit, but it does mean that he's responsible for me being a part of it. So I'll play the victim card here.
Yeah. No, I think you modeled health and fitness in a really good way with throughout our upbringing. You and mom both did, and it looked different again for the two of you. But again, as I've entered adulthood and being able to observe you and mom doing CrossFit together for the last 13 years, I mean that's huge. It's really impactful to be able to see that. Impactful for Brittany to be able to see mom also do that. But not only for people to be working out at the same place that long, but also as a couple is really unique and
Yeah.
really cool to see.
Mom and I, the main things that we've had in common over 45 years of marriage is our faith and our family. Those are the two like big rocks. A lot of our hobbies and outside interests, we, they're different.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe vacationing is a part of that too. We love going to the beach together. But CrossFit in the last 13 years, working out has been something that we have shared in common. It is a highlight of my day. Mom and I did a different workout this morning. I did zone two training. I did the bike and the Stairmaster. She did the WOD. And this has happened a lot lately where I just peek around the corner and I see her deadlifting. And then 10 minutes later, after the workout, I look around the corner and she's talking with somebody or crying with somebody or praying with somebody. And it almost brings me to tears. People are looking at me over there going like, what, did you just drop another weight on your foot? I'm going, no, I'm observing my wife. So yeah, it is a blessing when you can find areas of commonality
Yeah.
in the marriage that you can enjoy. And so I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, health and fitness it's been a key part for me, I guess, in fatherhood and being able to, I guess, have something to have control over that I feel like I can push towards and talk about that competitive drive or wanting to achieve something. It just gives me something to have a little bit of motivation for, and so like that half marathon, I enjoy running, but I don't like training. Like I would never, I say never. I don't enjoy training for a half marathon or marathon, and I didn't train for the half marathon. I just felt like everything I was doing, that would be a good barometer for me to be able to have from where I was the year before, and so being able to have something that is coming up, right? Something that is going to hold me accountable to staying on my personal goals of health and fitness is been really good.
Example that you set for anybody that's watching is that the busy job you've had, the traveling that you've done, we've already talked about that. We already know what some of the downside is, some of the things that you've missed out, family and didn't have the flexibility of doing things that you want to do, but you have made the best out of it. Where when you go to these cities, you want to explore the city while you're there.
Yeah.
You want to work out while you're there. And so one of the habits that you've had is that you run most of the time when you go to these cities.
Yeah.
And that is, I know so many men that travel, Joey, that they just check out from they're good with their routine when they're at home, but when they go on the road, they don't continue working out. So I think that's just really a testimony to your conviction to stay fit. Last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll wrap her up. I asked Mitch and Natalie this same question. A motto that we had growing up when we raised you all is that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. talent's good. We all have innate talents, but hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Is there anyone that you know that has outworked you, whether it be back in soccer, basketball, in your career, and your desire to be the best dad, best husband? Does that motto fit you today?
I believe so. I like to believe so. I think again, there's a lot of things that I could say I hang my hat on, and things that I've quote been able to achieve or do, at a young age, in my profession. But I do think a lot of that comes from, working to put myself in those situations, and I think back to where I got to in my career, because of how long I've been in my current role at my age. People are always surprised. Peers that I talk to, people in the league, people outside the league. You're only 33 years old, and you've been doing this for 10 years. You've been at the organization for 10 years, and the amount of texts that I've gotten from people since I've been leaving, of people saying, "Man, it was such a testament to see you be at one organization in professional sports for 10 years." That we wanted to aspire to do that, and that's by God's grace. That's by the people that have chosen to hire me. But I think that's also just a testament for me personally of knowing that I did everything that I could, even when things felt difficult for me personally, that I didn't reflect that on my professional job, that I felt like I still had a duty and a standard, and to be able to uphold that through my work ethic, I'm confident that I could leave there and say that everyone would know that Joey Harty is going to give his best. If it was an athlete coming back from an injury, which there are hundreds of, Joey Harty was going to give his best to try to help that athlete. And usually that meant going on my own time and doing what was not convenient for me to serve the athletes. To be able to pick up the phone for our coach, to be able to do those things, I think was a testament of work ethic.
Yeah. Well, Joey, I can't wait to see what's ahead for you. How all this experience and this passion are going to continue to merge, and the unique way God's made you, the experiences that God has given you, your talents, your hard work. I will echo what whoever that coworker said, that the issue for you isn't going to be what's next. It's going to be getting clarity out of which one of these next things God wants you to pursue. So it's going to be exciting watching for that. I will give a shameless plug for Delay the Decay Inner Circle, something that God has put on my heart that Joey's been helping me with. And it's coming together. Just stay tuned for more information on that. That will include different assessments and different ways to encourage you to live a healthy life in all 5 life domains. So, Joey, thank you for working with me on that. And can't wait to see what God has. So I love you. I'm proud of you. Thanks for being on this podcast with me.
Yeah, this is great. Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Yep.
And by the way, you were the loudest voice. You were one of the loudest encouragements. Said, "Dad, you should do this." So thanks for nothing. Thanks for doing this, because I'm having a ball.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love you.
So remember, we will see you next week on the Delay the Decay podcast with Dan Harty. And be reminded that it's not about perfection. It's about continuing in a healthy direction. Until next time. If today's conversation on generational health sparks something in you, follow, subscribe, and share it with someone else who's shaping the next generation. Until next time, keep prioritizing what matters most. And remember, it's about direction, not perfection.